And Craig Breslow joins us this morning. Craig, maybe a little bit unfortunate timing this morning because we are with an unruly crowd of Red Sox fans here. Let me introduce you to them. Guys, Craig Breslow, the Chief Baseball Officer of the Boston Red Sox. Hi. Good morning. Good morning, Craig.
Why is Ken tackling people?
Good morning. Good morning, Craig.
Good morning.
Appreciate you taking the time as always. And you said, I'm going to start with this because you said last night that you went into the deadline with the mindset that no prospect was off the table and no player was untouchable. So how is it that Joe Ryan is not on this roster today?
Yeah, while I am not going to get into too much detail about specific pursuits, everything that I said last night is true. And, we approached the deadline trying to identify impact additions that could bolster this team given what we have been able to do on the field thus far at the position that we're in and the promise of a playoff push and deep, postseason run. And we weren't able to line up. But in order to add impact players, particularly impact starting pitching, we had to take the position that we'd be willing to talk about anybody in our system, and we were. But that doesn't guarantee that you're going to line up with another team in order to get a deal across the line.
So then would you disagree with Ken Rosenthal, who characterized your efforts to get Joe Ryan as feeble at best?
I would strongly disagree with that, yes.
Okay.
Do you understand the chasm between your messaging and the fan base? It just feels like every year there is this promise of a new, driven, competitive, and just a new way in which that you feel that you will be competitive and aggressive at a deadline. And year after year, fans are let down. I don't understand how all these teams that you're competing with for a playoff spot in the division were able to find matches on deals that improved their team, but you were unable to.
I understand the frustration and disappointment from our fan base in walking out of the deadline without making a big splash, especially relative to what some of the other teams have been able to do. But that doesn't change what our intentions were going into this deadline, what we were willing to do and offer. And I don't think it changes the willingness that we have shown to be aggressive and get uncomfortable in making big additions to our team. That didn't happen this deadline, but it certainly happened over the off season. And we've talked a lot about being competitive and making a playoff run and the standard that our fans have come to expect from us and doing everything that we can to honor that. It doesn't always work out because we can't always make other teams line up with these types of things, but it did not change what we were willing to do and every path that we were pursuing to try to bolster this team.
You, both you and Sam Kennedy on this show and elsewhere said how aggressive you wanted to be when it came to improving this team at the deadline. Do you feel now, this morning, that you were aggressive in what you did to improve this baseball team?
I think we were aggressive in the conversations that we were having and what we were willing to do. Like I've said, though, that doesn't guarantee that we get a deal done. But I also recognize that our additions and our team, I am going to be defined by what happens from today through the end of the season. And we brought in Dustin May and Steven Matz, two important arms that we feel like are going to help our rotation and our pen. And we need to continue to play well and win games and get ourselves into the postseason.
So you believe that this team, as currently composed, is a team that should go deep in the playoffs?
You believe that, yes.
Craig, when it comes to where the power lies at trade deadline, is it you? Does the buck stop with you? Do you get to make the final decision, or is it John Henry and he needs to sign off on everything you do? Who gets to make those decisions? Who has final say?
Well, ultimately, John, as the principal owner, kind of can weigh in, and if he wanted to say we are or aren't going to do something, he clearly has that authority. However, John leaves baseball operations decisions to the baseball operations group, and I have yet to strongly advocate for something and have John stand in the way of it.
So that did not happen yesterday. He didn't stand in the way of anything getting done.
No.
So Craig, if that's the case, then is he frustrated just like fans are frustrated that you didn't do anything to bring in impact players that could impact this team to make a real deep postseason run?
I can't speak for how John feels, but I can speak for myself, which is that, when we had very clear priorities for the deadline and we weren't able to achieve those, there is a feeling of frustration and disappointment. But at the same time, I do think that we made our team better. I think we have a really good young team, and I think that's going to play out over the next 2 months.
Is there a danger that the players feel let down, that the players felt like they were in a position with an ad where they could be very, very competitive?
I think, frankly, that there is a risk in that I've been in a clubhouse during the trade deadline, and I've seen the impact of what new faces and additions can bring. I don't want to ignore the fact that we are bringing in a starter and a reliever, and I've had a handful of conversations with guys last night and wanted to make sure that they understand what our efforts were, how we tried to make additional additions. We weren't able to do that, but how much we believe in this team, which is a theme that I think has been consistent going back to spring training.
Craig, where's the $20 million you saved on Devers right now? Who gets that money? What is that money doing today?
Yeah, well, we talked about this at the time of the trade. The trade deadline is not free agency, right? And so having some financial flexibility doesn't always guarantee you a better outcome at the deadline. But our intentions are absolutely to, aggressively invest in the Red Sox and the guys that we're able to put on the field.
And just on John Henry, I know you said you're not going to speak for him, but he's part of the Economic Reform Committee. We heard a couple times this week about a confrontation with Rob Manfred and Bryce Harper about the potential of a salary cap. How does John Henry and how do you balance his role in trying to reshape the economics of baseball with building a championship team?
My goal, and again, I cannot speak for John, my goal is pretty simple, and that's to do everything I can to build a championship team on the field. That I don't anticipate changing, and if and when there are different constraints, as imposed by Major League Baseball, we'll operate within those to do everything we can to bring another World Series to Boston.
So how close were you when it comes to Joe Ryan?
Without being able to speak about specific pursuits, this isn't someone who is currently on our team. We felt like we were very aggressive in pursuing a number of controllable starting pitchers. Ultimately, controllable starting pitching didn't get traded, but it wasn't because we were unwilling to talk about anyone in our system.
Craig, when you go back to what Curtis asked in the beginning about losing the fan base, Alex Cora spoke about it, but last weekend Fenway was filled with Dodgers fans. When you look at that, when John Henry looks at that, does that worry you, that moving forward, that Red Sox fans are selling off their tickets to the opposing fan base and not showing up?
Well, certainly when Fenway is packed with Red Sox fans, it's an electric environment. We appreciate it. Our players appreciate it. That's the environment that we're trying to create and maintain, and know that is a consequence of the team that we've got on the field. But the 26 guys that we're gonna put on the field tonight are gonna do everything they can to provide that level of competition and entertainment for our fans, and we're going to do everything we can to compete at a high level. We've got a really good, young, athletic, dynamic team that I think is exciting to watch. And we've got a bunch of young players that are now in the upper levels of the minor leagues that should be impacting this team in the near future. But we want Fenway to be a very, very difficult place to play for opposing teams, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that happens.
No disrespect to the two arms that you got, and you mentioned a couple times that you believe you improved the team there. But when you say we are going to aggressively go after an impact arm, and you don't end up getting it, whatever the reason is, do you feel like you let down the fans on this?
I feel frustrated and disappointed that we were not able to walk out of the deadline room with the controllable impact arm that we set out to add. That's, I think, the way to characterize this, but I'm not sure there was anything more we could have done in order to get us closer or ultimately over the line.
I thought one of the big reasons you were brought in after Heim was let go was that Heim was too resistant to make a trade. Heim wasn't willing to make a Chris Sale deal and other things, and you came in, executed the Sale deal, and there was a feeling that you were going to be more aggressive. Is it possible that you overrate the prospects that you have in these negotiations, and that's why the Yankees and Astros and Blue Jays and Rangers were able to improve their team and the Red Sox were not, outside of a couple fringe guys?
We really like our minor league players. Is it possible that we like them more than other teams? Sure, probably because we acquired them, we have relationships with them. But I do think that we have a number of conversations inside the office in our deadline room about what our goal is and what we're trying to accomplish, and that's to win the World Series. And we have to be willing to get uncomfortable with trading some of our young players in order to do that. And I think the most important thing is that we were. It just didn't work out this deadline.
Is it an intentional focus of the team? And it's okay to say it because I think it would help fans and others understand it. Is it, when it comes to prospects, what you're talking about, is it a focus of this team to hang on to them because of the control factor, and it is a financially responsible way to manage personnel going forward?
No, I don't think that this was a control thing. Like I said, if it were about finances or holding on to our players at all costs, then we would go into a conversation with another team saying, hey, we're not going to talk about this player. This player is untouchable. We wouldn't trade this guy. We go into a deadline thinking, we would like to avoid trading these guys if at all possible, but by the time Thursday rolled around and we were aggressively pursuing adding impact players, we weren't unwilling to talk about anyone in our system. If that was going to get a deal done, we were willing to include these guys. It just, like I said, it didn't work out. And I think, there's strong evidence of that willingness when we talk about what it took to get Garrett Crochet to the Red Sox. There were a number of guys there that I think we could have taken the position we would have been unwilling to trade, but we didn't because of the need of our major league team.
So why does it work for other teams, though? In the case of Merrill Kelly or you name the player, why does it work for those teams and you can't make it work?
The short answer is another team who's trading a player has to like our players more than they like another team's players. That doesn't always work out. I don't think that's an indictment of talent. I think each team values players a little bit differently. There are trades that come across where I'm sure we all say, that seems like a really heavy return or a really light return. But the reality is the value is in the eye of the beholder, and we have to figure out ways to line up with other teams in order to get trades across the line.
All right, Craig Breslow. Well, proof will be in the pudding, and I appreciate you taking the time this morning, and we will catch up with you again next week, I am sure.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
All right, that's Craig Breslow, the Chief Baseball Officer of the Boston Red Sox.